And welcome back to the show. New Destiny is a not-for-profit organization that is aiming to provide housing and services to the city's most vulnerable homeless populations, victims of domestic violence, and also their children. Now, the need for permanent housing with services is greater than ever, with at least 40% of all homeless families in New York City citing the fact that domestic violence is the cause of their homelessness, an alarming statistic. Joining us now to share more details is the executive director of New Destiny Housing, Nicole Branca, and we thank you so much for being with us. And Nicole, glad to have you.
Thank you for having me.
You know, as I talked a little bit earlier in the intro, at least 40% of all homeless families in New York City cite domestic violence as the cause of their homelessness. And, you know, when it comes to your work, that's a startling statistic.
Yeah, it absolutely is. It's the number one reason why families enter into homelessness in New York City, even above eviction.
Mm.
And
And
so,
so take it away. I'm sorry.
yeah, no, that's okay. So, the city is filled with a lot of really fabulous providers who do work, all sorts of work, from legal to advocacy to emergency shelter for DV survivors. And where New Destiny comes in is we provide permanent housing. So to help DV survivors and their children break the cycle of violence and homelessness by having a place to stay for as long as they need it and as long as they want it. And it's all affordable and is adjusted to how much income that they have.
And so walk us through a little bit more about the work that you do. Obviously, helping those who are victims of domestic violence are at the forefront of your services. And so for somebody who may not be so familiar with New Destiny, give us a little bit more of a background.
Sure. So as you mentioned, we're a nonprofit based in New York City. We were started in 1994 and we started out of Safe Horizon. Actually, it's a nice backstory. We started as part of a larger domestic violence organization, and really out of we were grown out of the need for both more shelter and more housing for this population. And over time, we spun off onto our own and remained a developer, but switched gears once we realized that we needed a permanent solution to break the cycle. And so we focused laser-like on building permanent, affordable, and supportive housing, and with on-site services. So I know your team is familiar with our family support program. And so we not only develop these buildings in our community, but then we provide on-site social services to meet the needs of our families, and including the moms and the kids, to help them regain stability and a sense of hope and a new lease on life. And then I will say the other big component of New Destiny's work is working in the community to help more DV survivors find housing in private market and other affordable housing buildings. So with almost 19,000 people entering shelter each year because of domestic violence in New York City, yeah, that's a staggering number. We can't build our way out of the crisis. Even if there were 10 New Destinies in the city or 100 New Destinies, we can't build enough housing fast enough. So we also have a really dedicated, fabulous team of employees that work with DV survivors to help them find Section 8 vouchers or whatever they need to help subsidize their rent, and then work with landlords and brokers to find apartments scattered throughout the 5 boroughs to live there as well. And then with both our buildings and our programs called Housing Link, aptly named, we link people to housing. With both programs, we provide services so that, most of our families have experienced economic abuse as well as physical abuse. So we do a lot of work on money management and then what you would expect with the counseling to get over all the trauma they've experienced, both by being homeless and by being abused. I could go on and on about our services, but that's New Destiny in a nutshell. And then we do advocacy work because we need more resources.
Mm-hmm. Well, I want to jump in and ask a little question about basically taking things for granted, because sometimes we're on the outside, we don't know. But can you share with us a little bit more about the challenges that possibly families face who have encountered domestic violence and some of the needs that they have? Because many of us will just take it from a blanket approach and say, oh, you're just helping domestic violence, people, and put them into housing. But there's so much more. And so can you just give us a little bit of what are some of the challenges that we know that people face when they enter into your, coming through your doors?
Yeah, sure. So you're right. The first thing to do is get them safe, right? That's what people think of. Get them out of the situation they're in, get them out of shelter, get them into safe housing. and then the work starts, right? So it's creating a new community. DV survivors have broken with their abuser and the abuser's family, and oftentimes their circle of friends, and are now starting an entirely new life. So all of our buildings, we have community space, and we have all these events every day so that both the moms and the kids, and I keep saying moms because 96% of DV survivors are women, that they really have an opportunity to find new friends and rebuild a community. And then in terms of the actual services that we provide and the needs that the survivors have, I mentioned earlier, economic abuse. 99% of our survivors have experienced economic abuse. So we do a lot of money management and job training. We help them get back into school. We have a lot of our survivors, 75% of our housing is in the Bronx. So a lot of our moms are going to school at Host and Bronx Community College, and we really try to get them back on track. And then we help with the kids. You know, they were homeless and they were being shuffled from their abusive home to a shelter, possibly to another shelter, possibly to a third shelter. They have not been in school. Their education has been deeply disrupted, and that's, you know, pre-COVID. And so we spend a lot of time helping kids get back on an educational path, so that to really break the cycle, this awful trajectory that they had been on. And then DV survivors have a higher incidence of heart disease, diabetes, depression, anxiety, as you would imagine, having experienced abuse sometimes for years or decades. So they can't take care of themselves if they're not allowed to go to the doctor. If they're protecting their kids all the time, their self-care is completely gone by the wayside. So we spend a lot of time doing counseling, giving them referrals to local CBOs and healthcare settings so that they can get the care that they need.
Yeah.
And then we really focus more on wellness now that we're learning more about their physical health issues. Spending more and more time on health and wellness. So we're offering yoga classes and meditation and nutrition counseling. So we really try to have a holistic, trauma-informed approach in all of our buildings and programs.
So before we go, I want to have an opportunity for you to talk a little bit about the new supportive housing development that's going on right in the borough of the Bronx.
Yes, the Cordon. It was formerly known as the Bryant, and last week when we opened the building, we renamed it the Cordon after Carol Cordon, who was our executive director for the last 24 years. And the least we could do for somebody who dedicated so much of her life to helping DV survivors. The building is 62 units. 37 of the apartments are set aside for domestic violence survivors and their kids exiting shelter. The other apartments are all for very low income households. Most of our buildings are in the Bronx. Most of our residents are Bronx residents. So we're particularly excited to be talking on the show. We have we have community space. We have a children's playroom. We have the nicest laundry room in the city. You can see it's on the top floor and you can see most of the city from there. A little fun fact. And the building was actually built on city-owned land, and as part of it, we have a NYCHA basketball court. So we're also helping to redevelop the court so that the kids in the building will have a beautiful new basketball court in a landscape backyard to play. And it's in the Longwood section in the Bronx. So it's really nice, and it's great. I've only been here a year, so this is my first building, and I'm just thrilled to have. To add this building to the community, because it'll be a real anchor of stability. These tenants stay forever, and they're just so excited to have their own home with their own key and their own kitchen. And so we find that our buildings, we are spread out in most of the city, even though we're mostly in the Bronx. And we've just found that our tenants and just make great neighbors, and we're excited to be now in the Longwood. This is our first building in Longwood, so we're very excited to be in the section of the Bronx.
Well, glad to have you, and want to let you know that we're excited for what's going on, and thank you for the work that you're doing and really helping a vulnerable population within our community, Nicole. And we thank you for joining us here on Open.
Yeah, thank you for calling attention to this issue.
We're glad we can. We're glad we can. All right. For more information, what we encourage you to do is go ahead and visit their website, newdestinyhousing.org. And then also you can check them out on social media and follow them on Twitter at newdestiny.org, I should say. All right. We've got more show coming up. Don't go anywhere. Open continues coming up in a few.